Hey, you guys, welcome to Addictive Personalities. My name is Bethany, and this podcast is based on lived experience, not professional advice. We're going to talk about addiction in all forms, mental health, trauma, healing, and everything in between. This is a space for honest conversation without judgment. So, wherever you are in your journey, I'm really glad you're here. So, today I want to start with an affirmation that feels really relevant to this episode. I am allowed to redefine who I am, not based on who I used to be, but based on who I'm choosing to become. And I want to start this episode with a personal story. So, a few years ago, I think it was 2022, I had just broken up with a boyfriend who I was living with, and it was a very kind of depressing relationship. We were more like roommates. It wasn't toxic. It was just not a good relationship. It's actually the most normal breakup I've ever had. But anyway, after that, I started losing a lot of weight, like a lot. And for me, that kind of extreme weight loss is something people might associate with meth use, because that was one of the obvious signs in my past. At that point, I had been clean for around 4 years, and I found out that someone I knew had started assuming I must have relapsed. Actually, this was a very close friend of mine, and they didn't really come to me directly. They were talking about it behind my back, kind of under the guise of concern, because I had lost weight and maybe I had made a few abrupt, bitchy comments. And in my opinion, I think that I often come across pretty bitchy, so it wasn't necessarily abnormal, but that hurt me deeply, because this was a very close friend of mine, and also because it was not true, like at all. Like having my sobriety come into question from somebody who I trusted and loved, and having worked so hard in my progress and to be proud of my progress and proud of my commitment to staying clean. So to find out someone saw a physical change, mixed it with some attitude and jumped straight to relapse, it was honestly really unfair. And it made me realize how much this topic really matters. Because people have this idea of what addiction is supposed to look like when you're in it and what someone is supposed to look like after they come out of it. And most of that idea comes from extremes, from TV, from intervention style stories, from rock bottom, from the most visible, most dramatic version. And a a lot of us live near a downtown area and we see it on the streets. It's just very dramatic, very intense. And we often apply that same perception to anyone who is using drugs. And yes, some of us may have been there. I have absolutely had moments in my life where I can relate to that kind of desperation, where it was probably very obvious that I was on drugs and I was not behaving normally. And I think, you know, in this day and age, with so many street drugs having so many different chemicals and other things in it, that it really does take a huge toll on your mental health and your psyche and your physical health. But addiction doesn't always look like that. Okay, I cannot stress that enough. There are high functioning addicts, there are people hiding in plain sight, and there are people with jobs, routines, kids, homes, responsibilities, and people would never suspect what is going on unless you were really, really close to them. And a lot of high functioning addicts learn how to keep people at just the right distance, like so that it could be maybe a potential idea in someone's mind, but you can never really put your finger on it. That was me. up until I chose to get clean in 2018. That was 100% me. And addiction is not just substance use, it could be behaviors, gambling, porn, sex, sugar, social media, control, shopping, all kinds of behaviors that are rooted in the same thing. And those don't necessarily take a physical toll on people. So, and some people hide it very, very well. But no, what nobody talks really honestly about is what it looks like on the other side. Like, because I think a lot of people assume that once you've been through addiction, you're supposed to carry it on your face forever. Like there should be some physical or visible mark on you. Like you're supposed to look broken, fragile, or like you're always one step away from falling apart again. And I've really started to question that because healing doesn't have one look either. Some people rebuild quietly. Some people change everything. Some people look almost the same on the outside, but internally they are completely different. And I think one of the hardest parts is letting go of the identity that got attached to you, not just by yourself, but by other people too. Because we are so used to attaching identity to past behavior. People hear part of your story and then they build a whole picture in their mind about who you are. They have their own biases, their own assumptions, and usually not much real understanding or experience. I've shared parts of my story before. I've actually shared probably too much of my story before, and I've seen that shock in people, like real surprise, like, whoa, wait, you used drugs for over 20 years? Well, you can't tell, or you don't look like it. Like, what does that even mean? Like, and part of me thinks, yeah, no shit. I'm grateful for that. But another part of me thinks, well, why would I need to look like that? Why would I need to fulfill some kind of preconceived notion of what you think addiction looks like? Why do people expect there to be some kind of permanent visual identity attached to addiction? For so long, the language is addict, recovering addict, always in recovery, lifelong disease, manage it forever. And for some people, that framework may help them. And I'm not knocking that at all. If that is what supports someone and keeps them grounded, I respect it 100%. But for me personally, that was not the path I took. So I had to ask myself, do I want to carry that label forever? Or is that something I went through and not something that I am? And honestly, I still sit with that. I'm that doesn't mean I'm pretending it never happened. I'm actually very proud of what I've overcome. It shaped me, it taught me, it changed me. But I do not believe it has to haunt me forever. And I think that's where people get uncomfortable because if they know your past, but you don't look like what they expect, then they don't know where to place you. You're not who you used to be, but you also don't fit into the box they had in mind, and that's okay. But I also want to bring up another point. It's like, conversely, if they do know your past and you do look like what they'd expect, then what does that mean in that relationship? Will they always consider you that you were an addict and so you're always an addict based on what people are told? Is like, you're never really cured of addiction. And I don't think anybody wants to be defined by that either. Even if maybe you do have some physical, visible signs of having had a substance abuse problem in the past, like that, I don't think should dictate how people treat you. But healing is not about fitting into a box. And what healing is about honesty about what got you there or here, honesty about what you were avoiding and what you're trying to face now, honesty about what you had to face to get out and what struggles you still have, and also honesty about who gets access to that part of your story, because that part matters too. You do not owe everyone your history. You get to choose who you share that with. And if you do share it, a lot of people still will not know how to process it if they only understood or understand addiction through stereotypes. And I mean this in the nicest way, but that's ignorance. So you want to just be careful of who you share that intimate and vulnerable part with. If you don't look like their version of an addict, it may confuse them, but it is not your job to make yourself fit their understanding. If anything, maybe the work is to define it for yourself first, to know what it means in your story, to know how you want to carry it, if at all, because the real shift is not just stopping the behavior, it is changing the relationship you have with yourself and with the past addiction. Does it have to be a forever relationship? I don't know. For me personally, no. It is a forever relationship for me because I choose to use my addiction as a way to help other people know that there is another side and that you don't have to be defined by your addiction. So I will have that relationship with my past in that way, but I'm not going to lead with that anymore. I don't think. I'm still debating it in my head. But addiction was never just about the thing that we were using or doing. It was about the need to escape, the need to handle the fear, the pain, the avoidance. And when you actually face those things, you are not the same person anymore. That is liberation. Awareness is liberating. Self-awareness is liberating. Pattern recognition is liberating. And for me, healing is not about putting myself in a box and saying, well, I'm broken forever, or I have to identify with this forever. For me, healing is about getting honest enough to heal the pain underneath it. So no, you might not look like an addict anymore because you are not living like one anymore. And maybe that is the point. So if you're listening to this and you're in that in between space where you don't fully recognize who you used to be, but you're still figuring out who you are now, you are not doing it wrong. You are just in the process of becoming something new, shedding that old stigma and defining yourself new, new and improved. You don't have to forget. You don't have to completely detach yourself from your past. In fact, I strongly suggest not doing that, but it doesn't have to be like the subtitle of your story. It doesn't have to be like part of your identity now. Um so you're it's okay to be in a scary place where it doesn't make sense, because for so long we did identify with the people we surrounded ourselves with and the addiction that we were in, and that was honestly just our identity. And so, but now that we're on the other side of it and we get to now control the narrative or get ahead of it, thank God. You don't need a label to justify your growth. You just need to introduce yourself differently. You do not need to introduce yourself by your worst chapter. And you do not need to spend the rest of your life proving that you're safe, healed, stable, or changed just because other people only understand addiction one way. The truth is, what you look like after addiction is entirely up to you. If this episode resonated with you, I would love for you to keep coming back and listening. I'm going to keep sharing, learning, and figuring this out with you in real time. And wherever you are in your journey, you're not alone. There's more to come, and we're just getting into it. This is Addictive Personalities.